This will be a quick video to review how to create flat roofs inside of a parapet structure. And what you can see here is a model that kind of resembles what your restaurant might be looking like. And we're going to do the roof and also the scuppers and downspouts and roof drains. So to get started, we'll want to kind of get rid of some of the stuff that's already here and then recreate it. So I'm going to delete my roof. I'm going to delete these drains. I've got a wall penetration there, a wall opening. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm also going to get rid of my downspout. And same on this side. Tucked in this corner, I've got also my two downspouts and a wall opening in there somewhere. Let's see. Let's see. Wall opening. Got it. Okay. So now we're ready. I'm going to go to a section view, and you can see we've got our walls going up to parapet height. I've established my roof that's 5 feet below my parapet, and then I've got a plan called roof, and it shows my my 4 walls. So this is where I want to start, and we'll just go to roof by footprint, and it defaults to selecting walls, which is fine for us. We want to pay attention to what kind of roof we've got. Now I just took a standard roof that came with the template and did some small modifications. So let's take a look inside to see what the layers are. So I've got an EPDM membrane, which is a rubber membrane. That's fine. Some rigid insulation. And I've got the structure. What I did is I just modified these numbers a little bit so that I could end up with a 2-foot thick assembly. And I've chosen that one of these is going to be variable thickness. Most commonly it's this layer, which is the thermal air layer, which is rigid insulation. Again, we've talked a little bit about tapered insulation roofs. So that's what I'm going to do, is show that that's the part that's going to vary as we go ahead and make up our roof and define the slopes on the top end. Bottom end will be flat, and the top end will vary as needed. This layer right here will change. So with that, I'm going to hit that and get started, and now we're just going to pick our 4 walls. I'm going to hit tab, they all highlight, I click. That's going to the outside. I really want to flip that. I want that to be the inside, and we'll hit OK. And what we've got here now is just a completely flat roof. If I check my section, you can see it's 2 foot thick. The bottom of it is going to be at the roof layer, and then it's going to go up from there, the 2 feet thickness. If I change my detail to oops, let's go to wireframe. I thought I'd be seeing my thicknesses. Just have to change my view there, so I can see I've got the structure there. If I zoomed in a little further, I can start to see some other layers, but basically that's what I'm after, is go back to shaded there, so I can see. Actually, where did I have it? Did I have it realistic? Anyway, so there it is. From here, though, I want to start creating my slopes. Now, there's 2 ways I'm going to show you how to do this, and one I'll just start with, which is the one that we've done before. So I'm going to select my roof. I'm going to go ahead and allow me to select surfaces. So hold on. Select elements of my face. Why am I not being able to select my roof here? Okay, I don't know why I can't get my roof, but I'll have to slice through there, turn on the filter, and turn off the walls, and now I just have the roof selected. And you can see here now my menu allows me to either edit the footprint or modify sub-elements. We're happy with the footprint, so I turn on modify sub-elements, and here's where I have to do a little math. I've got a structure that is 40 foot wide, that's out to out. So about a foot thick walls, so I'm dealing with about 38 feet of fall that I've got to do. So I'm going to bring up a calculator. Our minimum fall is 1/4 inch per foot. So it's just a simple math calculation, 38 times 0.25, and this will give me the number of inches of fall from one end of the roof to the other. So now again, that's the minimum. So instead of specifying 9.5, I'm going to specify 10. And I'm going to do it for these two corners. I can do it both at once. I'm holding down Control so I can select more than one at a time, and then just specify 10 inches. And once I do that, and then take a look at my section now, doesn't look like it changed at all. Alright, hold on here, select my roof, and go to my Modify Sub-Elements, back to my roof plan, and select that. Maybe I didn't hit enter, 10 inches, and 10 inches. Okay, I can see that they're actually now displaying 10 inches. Okay, so now let's go to our section, and sure enough, you can see that the part of the roof that tapers is this, the insulation above, that rigid foam above the structural joists or trusses or whatever we've got that's holding up that roof. So that's kind of, should be familiar. This is what we did with the exercise that we did out of the book, is created that thing. But we also have a need to send these crickets, send the flow of water over to the corners, and to do that we're going to create crickets. Now, like I said, a couple of ways we can go about that. One is, again, we would modify these sub-elements. So again, I don't know why I'm not able to select my roof, but I'll select it here, go back here. Again, we've got these menu items here that are specific to when we're in this edit mode, and I can go through here, and by turning on Modify Sub-Elements, I see these points, and again I can click them and see that those are at 0, which is fine. I've got 10 inches of fall from here to here, but I also need to divert water that ends up right in this area. I need to divert it into the two corners where I'll be having my drains. So I'm going to add a split line, and I want to put that split line at the midpoint there and then bring it out. Now, I happen to know that that dimension on that structure is 50 feet out to out. So I've got about 48, which is half of that now. Basically falling from this point here into this corner is 24-foot trip, and we've got a 1/4 inch for each one of those feet. The reason I'm paying attention to that right now is because I want to make sure that I set up my line accordingly. So 24 feet times 0.25 is a total of 6 inches. So I know that from here all the way over is 10 inches of height. If I only want it to come up to where 6 inches, remember it's starting at 0 here by the time it gets to 6, so I should be about 60% of the way. Now I'm not going to calculate this, I'm just going to approximate it, but somewhere in this neighborhood is where that split line would end up, and we would want to select that split line and give it an elevation, and we're going to give it that 6 inches raised. Okay, now we've got a deformation now in this whole thing. Let's just check our points again. Select the roof. Okay, select the roof and modify my setup elements. I'm going to check to see what these are. So this should be at 6 inches also, this point. And this point also ought to be at 6 inches. Okay, and so what we've got now is a valley here where we've got a slope going down here, a slope going down here. These two lines, really, I don't want to see them, but because I'm not perfectly at where the 6 inch mark would happen, I'm getting these other deformations. But let's go to annotate for just a moment and tell it that we want to see spot slopes. And if we come in here, we can see that our spot slopes, it shows us exactly which way the fall is for each of these planes, and it tells us what that slope actually is. So we can see that where we've defined this point at 6, it's 3/8 of an inch per foot, which is actually steeper. So it means that I've got this point out too far. So by just dragging it back a little ways, okay, just dragging it back a little ways, you can see that a couple things are going on. So this label over here is changing from 3/8 to quarter, and these ones up here and here, instead of pointing diagonal, they're starting to straighten out, and when they're kind of straight is pretty much where we want to be. And so essentially now I've created the plane. These are there only because, again, it's not totally perfect. I could do the math and situate this point perfectly, but I choose not to. One of the things that we can do is we can set our line types. We can actually come in here and create invisible lines and just select these two, and what we end up with is a roof. We really don't even need this label now, we can get rid of it. But essentially that's the roof that we want to see, which is that we have one big plane that's sloping this direction, and then this cricket that's going to divert that water towards the corner. Okay, just to finish this off, let's just do one side and place our roof drains. So to do that, I'm going to go to a component. I've already preloaded my dome, and I'm just going to place these. And that is telling me I got trouble. So I'm going to place on this face. There we go. I just had to situate that. Of course, I've got a primary and a secondary drain. Okay, we'd want to situate those. And then I'm also going to put in a wall opening right here, and then also that collector and downspout. So to do that, I really want to go to my north elevation. So I want to kind of see from the outside there. So I'm going to switch over to my north elevation. And I'm dealing with this corner here. This view doesn't help me very much. So I'm going to go to wireframe, where I can actually see through. And I can actually see now my roof plane there. So I know my wall opening needs to be in this neighborhood. Kind of making sense of that and getting my bearings here, I'm now going to go to the west elevation where the hole is going to be. So it's going to be right in here. Again, I'm going to go to wireframe, just type WF to change that mode, and we can see again this roof plane is coming down right here, and kind of in this neighborhood I want to create my my wall penetration. So I'm going to go right here to wall opening, and I'm going to just click. This doesn't have to be perfectly precise. Okay, sorry, wall opening, and sorry, it asked me to click the wall first and then to create my opening. Something's going wrong here. Select a wall to create the temporary opening. Okay, I've selected that wall, and now it's saying starting point of the rectangular opening. Okay, so now I can come down here and draw a rectangle. So I'm getting it in light blue. There's some temporary dimensions that are coming up that are showing me the approximate size of it. I don't really want this to be too big. I can adjust the size of it in a moment. So for now, I'm just going to cut that. When I click that second point of the rectangle, it cuts the hole through the roof, and now I can see into where my roof drains are sitting. From here, I want to place the downspout. For that, I'm going to go to a 3D view. Every single family that you bring in is a little bit different. I found that this one seems to like it when you're in 3D to place it. So again, place a component, hunt on my list for where this thing is, and I'm looking for scupper, funnel, and downspout. And choosing that, you can see it's giving me a little bit of a preview on the screen of where it's going to go. And I can fine-tune its location in a moment, but approximately right there. I'll go back to my west elevation. It's looking pretty good. Might want to move it down just a little bit. I'm using the keyboard. Whoops. Select the downspout, nudge it down a little bit. I think we can be done with the wireframe. So I'm going to go to, let's go to shaded SD to get us to this view. At this point now, I'm going to try to select my opening and just shrink it down a little bit so it's a little bit more appropriately sized for the downspout that I've got. So just scoot it in a little bit. Doesn't need to be that tall either. So, so anyway, no particular magic there about what size it needs to be. This downspout actually needs to come down a little bit further. So I can just want to drag this thing to where it goes underground. It's real common to take those things to a sub drain that's underground. So there that is. I go back to my 3D and now I can see that that's looking all right. I got my drains in place. You can situate these a little closer to the corner. They probably would be, very close to the corner. And so that takes care of that. I would then mirror all of these elements, a total of 4 elements, both drains, the wall opening, and the downspout, and I would mirror them along that midpoint so that they would also show up in this other corner. I'm going to skip that part. And we're going to move on to the next way of making your roof. So I'm going to delete this. Delete all those things that we just made. This one I'll go kind of quick. I think you're going to like this one. There's a little less math involved. Oops. I'm having a hard time selecting that opening. Let's see if we can improve that. There, I got it. Delete. Okay. So here we are back to open roof. And in section, of course, we see nothing's there. So let's go back to our roof plan. And we're going to start this one off exactly the same way. Roof by footprint. I'm going to select my 4 walls tab after I hover, then click. Again, it's on the outside. I want to switch it to the inside. And I've got my correct roof selected there as far as the type goes. And then I finish edit mode. So now I've got my roof. Again, check the section. But this time I'm going to go back to my roof and I'm going to I've got it selected still, and I'm going to edit the footprint. So right now, because none of these are defining slope, it's dead flat. But I'm going to select this low point, and I am going to say that from this point, I want that roof to slope upwards from this point. Okay, so that's kind of the normal way that we would define this. And so if I check that it defines the roof slope, I can do that up here or here. And then I specify the slope. And again, we want 0.25 inches. So if I just type 0.25, it'll put that in there. And now our roof is going to be sloping upwards. So I'm going to finish this just for a moment so we can take a peek. And there it is. Our roof is sloping upwards. Now, keep in mind that this method does not result in us having a uniform bottom. Only by modifying the sub-elements do we get that kind of a roof. This one is going to be a little less true to the actual way that a roof would be framed. So just keep that in mind. It's a little bit of a compromise there. So going back to my roof plan, so I've got the slope that I want, and it's exactly at 1/4 per foot. I didn't have to do any calculations. I type the slope, and I get the pitch that I'm after just by specifying what pitch it is, and specifying that this part of the roof is defining that slope. So back to my edit footprint, because we are not done. I need to create a cricket over here, and I think you've done this before in the commercial structure that you did in your second semester, and but we're actually going to break this line up a little bit, and we're going to start by actually using our split element tool, and I'm going to come over here. We're going to split this, and I want to just give myself just a little bit of a segment here, and I'm going to just say 6 inches is all we're going to need. I'm going to do the same on both ends. Okay. Now notice by splitting this up, I end up with 3 segments here. So dial into 6. I end up with 3 segments. Okay. I actually want to have one more, so I'm going to actually split this at the midpoint, if I can find the midpoint. And it might not find it for me, so I'm going to actually cut it where I think is the midpoint, and then I'm going to just give myself, can I do a reference plane? Will it let me? I'm going to place a reference plane from that midpoint over here. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to these 2 points and drag these over until they hit that midpoint. Okay, we want that to be precise. Done with my reference plane. So now these 2 lines here, I don't want them to define slope. We're going to define the slope a different way. These, on the other hand, these are critical. The reason we have to leave a small piece there is because this line is defining the slope that is taking this entire plane, starting at this point at 0 and sloping upwards at the quarter 12 pitch that we're after. And so it's important that we keep those 2 little tiny guys. They could probably even be tinier, but they can't be 0. So at this point now, we want to select this one. I'm going to hold down Control to select both of them, and we're going to uncheck the define slope. And we're going to define that slope in a different way. Here we're going to use a slope arrow. Okay, I'm going to select that slope arrow, and right now it's defaulting to the same slope that these other lines were. And I want to select the end point of this line and come all the way up until the other end point, which is, again, the midpoint of the roof. I want to create another slope arrow that does the same thing down here. Again, starts at this end point, zoom in if you need to, and then ends right here. Okay, so what we're saying is that this edge of the roof starts here and then goes up at a quarter per foot till it hits the end point there. This one doing the same exact thing. When we make this roof now, that sure doesn't look right. So let's take a look in our 3D and see what's going on. Okay, so that did not at all do what I wanted it to do. Going back to our roof plan, let's see what we got here. I've got that at 1/4 to 12. Here it says 1/2, but here it says quarter. That should be fine. That piece is going up. These are not defined. If I delete my slopes and remake this roof, what do I get? That's what I'm after, okay? So going back to our roof, double clicking this to redefine it, choosing my slope arrow, placing this. Okay, I think I know what happened. It even though it said it was going to give me one that was at the quarter per 12, it didn't. So I'm going to just draw these slope arrows in here, and then come back up here. Nothing like a flub in a live recorded thing. So, so I have those 2 slope arrows there. I'm just going to double check. I should have done this last time, but I've got both of them selected now, and sure enough, the slope has defaulted back to 9/12. Looks like I need to change them individually. Let's see here. Oh, gotcha. Okay, so slope arrows can be defined 2 different ways. I've got a height at the tail right now that is going up to 10 foot higher than the beginning. We don't want that. We want to define the slope. Here the slope is defined as 9/12, And again, I want to type just 0.25, enter. That'll now do quarter. Selecting this other one, again, switch it from height at tail over to slope, and specify that this is going to be 0.25. And let's try remaking our roof. And we'll go to our 3D. And sure enough, there we have the roof. And this time, I didn't need to do any calculating. I didn't need to do any placing of points or typing in different elevations. This entire roof is defined by these tiny little segments here that are creating this plane, which slopes up away from this wall at 1/4 inch per foot. And then these two slope arrows that slope up from those 2 points, also at 1/4 inch per foot, coming up to a center point. And then Revit does the rest. It intersects those planes. Now, again, if I look at my section, you can see I've got some strange things. I can see the slope coming down, then it flattens out where it slices through the pitch that's going the other direction. So again, the actual structure is not exactly true. So just kind of keep that in mind with this method. So depending on what you're doing and depending on how accurate your model needs to be, you know, the top end of this roof is perfect, but the bottom of it may not be an exact representation. Of course, from here, we would drop in our components again, find our drain, choose our face, place the drain, drains as it may be, and move onward. So that's it. Those are the two different ways of creating a flat roof with crickets within a parapet.